Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all of our fellow karmic capitalists. My name is Adam Vasquez, and I'm here with my wonderful and stunning co-host.
Denise Kohnke.
And we're here.
The second thing like that.
and we're here with Conscious Incorporated, where business and consciousness are incorporated. And, for those who are new to this, every week we try to do this most weeks at this time and this day to cover about really just bringing the two topics together, business and consciousness, and really unfolding this new era of capitalism called karmic capitalism. And that's what we discuss here on the show. Now, we do not have a script, although we do a little bit have a script this time, Denise.
It's
guidelines.
It's a more formal outline than we've ever had before, and we used it last week.
And we have topics, and we cover the topics. But today we're going to do a continuation of making karmic decisions in your business and how to move up the sort of food chain of the map of consciousness, moving from shame up to enlightenment and reflecting that in your own decisions.
Yep.
So before we go ahead,
the map of consciousness, you do such a nice job of that.
Okay, well, before we jump in, this is part 2. This was a 2-part series. We were hoping to get this in 1 part, but we were also just a lot to cover. So this is a 2-part series. And as a reminder for those who are just jumping in, I'm going to throw here up The Map of Consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins. And for those who are new with us, this is Dr. David Hawkins mapped out consciousness based on hundreds of thousands of interviews and tests with individuals around physical.
Tens of thousands.
Oh, I thought it was 100,000 or over 100,000.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah, that was like closer to 150,000, but I don't have an exact number. Someone can go fact check that, but it was a large scale and over several years. This is not just a 1-year study. This was decades. And he's Dr. Hawkins basically mapped out vibrations and levels based on your thoughts and the impact it had in your physical experience, meaning your physical health. So what like words and feelings and emotions say shame does to you versus enlightenment. And those who are watching, we also included a couple images from another study from Dr. Emoto, which is the water experiment, where these are frozen crystals. And he tested out the idea that our thoughts and words create vibrations and change the physical attributes in water, which our bodies are 75% of. And you'll see here, if you're looking at on screen, on the top is a beautiful crystal, and that's joy. And then on the bottom is this muddied out puddle frozen, and that's basically a shame, or I think it might even be a little bit even anger. But regardless, it just kind of shows you what this energy or this frequencies or these words are really doing to our bodies, especially if we're 75 or more % of water.
Yeah. And as a writer, I talk a lot about words, and words are very important, but words have different meanings depending upon who's hearing the word and who's saying the word. So the idea of the word as an icon for you is important to remember, because this doesn't need our culture to understand it. All cultures understand this. It's relevant to the Aborigines as much as it is to the people who live in Asia or Africa. So the idea of a word, when we say words are communicated to the water, it's not necessarily the word. It is what is behind the word.
It's the emotional, what it symbolizes emotionally, how you're feeling and what you feel when you say this word. So, right. So translated in any language, the feeling's still the same. And since we're primarily speaking English on the show, we'll keep it in English. But
and since we're 85% water, we'll keep remembering that.
Yes.
And so also it works with blood. So
right, because blood is mostly water. So when we just in general, we refer to the map of consciousness a lot. And I think it's a really good benchmark or just a guideline of where you are emotionally and those impacts on whether you're up in a more of enlightened abundance based, or if you're in a fear, scarcity, shame based model.
Right.
And we all know fear and shame is where diseases are created, cancer is created at that level, and sickness. Whereas when you move up, this is where abundance, wealth, happiness all happens. And it is as simple as a choice to choose to be those things. However, it doesn't feel that way, does it, Denise? It doesn't feel that simple all the
It's
time.
not that simple, and it's very complicated, and it really is a practice. I wouldn't call it a choice, because you can't just, I'm going to choose not
Well,
to be in grief. We talked about that. I think it's a practice. You have to work on it.
I think it's a choice. You make the choice to practice, right?
To practice.
Yeah,
Correct. And everybody can relate to, we're at a party, everyone's having a good time. Somebody who's vibing very differently walks in the door, and everything goes to, depression and crap.
yeah,
It's because of the vibe of the person. And if you take that thing that we have all experienced and put it in a color field or a vibration chart, that's what we're talking about.
right. And so then now how, because if our thoughts are these vibrations, and a more powerful thought is up higher in a peace, joy, and love, and lower power or force, as we say, when you try to force something, it's usually based on fear or scarcity or something else, and that's why it doesn't work out. Or it may work out in the short term, but in the long term it doesn't, and it's rarely sustainable. So if you just look at just even when countries go to war with each other, the United States occupying countries based on force, forcing them to go to democracy or forcing them to adopt our culture. What happens, Denise? It doesn't work, right?
No, it rarely works. And, testament to that is culture comes from inside. Culture is a choice as well. Ergo, we have a war going on right now, and Russia cannot impose culture on these people, because they're not going to stand for it. It's deeper than rationality. Rationally, they should just quit.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes a little deeper than that.
Well, in being a karmic capitalist organization versus just an ordinary or former older version of capitalism, we talk about it as authoritarian capitalism, which is earlier, and then we have shareholder capitalism, and now some people say 2.5, which is stakeholder or conscious capitalism, but it's not consciousness based, that's where we're at, and that's the karmic level. That's the next level. That's really in our minds 3.0 for capitalism. And why? Because it really is about making decisions throughout the organization culturally based on the higher vibrationary power, not force, which meaning making decisions on the plus side of things, meaning from a love and abundance perspective versus a scarcity and fear. And I think each of us could always identify when we made a fear-based decision and how that worked out versus an abundance faith-based decision, meaning, I'm just going to try to do the best I can, and I'm going to try to I'm just going to have faith that it's going to work out. Even coming from love, it may look like it's going to be painful short term, but it usually always works out in the long run. And even if it doesn't work out in the long run, it still does, because you're on the more divine and right path versus working in the scarce, because our universe is an abundance-based vibration. And Dr. David Hawkins' work really sheds light on the fact that we're in a benevolent universe, because why would love be the more powerful vibration or energy force over scared, right? It wasn't a loving universe, right?
Yes. And think about the people who have been on the right side of history all along. Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King. I mean, they were proponents of a higher vibration as a solution and a framework for decision making. This isn't new. It just comes by way of different words in different contexts. I think it's interesting because you mentioned conscious capitalism, which is the buzzword of the day. If you don't come here, we've evolved it. But if you think about what conscious capitalism means, consciousness has so many definitions. It has medical and psychological definitions. But what people talk about in conscious capitalism is really mindfulness. I think that's where most of them land. Be mindful of what you do for constituencies beyond your shareholders, meaning stakeholders, all the people in your ecosystem that have skin in the game, for lack of a better word, in the outcomes of your business. So mindfulness, all right, let's take mindfulness. Everyone knows what that is. One step further, and you start to see the things that we see. You start to see how mindfulness begets who am I? What do I feel? What are my senses? The senses come in. All of this stuff is actually connecting to a higher order, and a higher order means the universe. And we talk a lot about universe, and some people say there's God, there's every culture has a representation, a word for that. We're talking about the universe because we look at this as a we were just talking about religion right before this, just Adam and I, and it's like, oh, we got to go. We're starting. But when we think of consciousness, we think about it as a scientific reality that is non-cultural. So yes. You strip everything down, you strip away all the religion, you strip away all the non-culture, and even the concept of ethics, as opposed to morality, which we talked about last week. Ethics being cultural and according to the laws of culture, and morality being your own internal, where's my line? So that's what we mean by consciousness.
Perfect. That's a great segue. So decision making, and I think that's, when you look at, say, conscious capitalism versus karmic capitalism, karmic capitalists understand vibration. They understand quantum physics. Now we're all learning quantum physics, but you know what I mean. They're trying to leverage as much as we know on the bleeding edge of science. They embrace spirituality. They embrace the unknowingness of synchronicities and things that we can't explain necessarily through hard science, although quantum physics is proving more and more, which is exciting. Yes. But we know from our own, there's a knowingness to karmic capitalists have a knowingness inside of them, and they move to that knowingness about and really try to make decisions on this. So when we talk about decisions, we talked about this last time, decisions we're not talking about making good or bad decisions.
No, good or bad doesn't exist.
Because, whoever's impacted by these decisions based on their point of view and where they are on this sort of cone of consciousness, this map of consciousness, if they're looking through a lens of being scared of change, then they're going to, if you do make a decision, even if your decision is based on love and abundance, they may see it as evil because they don't understand it, because they're looking at it through a lens of scarcity, right?
Yeah, it's a complicated little puppy.
It really is. So then the question is, who's right? Well, it's whoever is the eyes of everything. A great mentor told me early on, he's like, how many sides are on how many sides on a coin? And I was like, 2. They're like, no, there's 3. There's the heads and tails, and then there's this little edge on a coin. And I was like, he's like, that is what truth is. There's yours and mine, and then there's the truth
in the middle.
So we're trying to find the middle, find the truth, and through our decisions, trying to be in most alignment with the truth, which is love and abundance in this process. So last week we talked mostly about the lower vibration areas, and we started in I believe it's shame, and we ended in anger. Sounds really terrible. We ended in anger, Denise. We were angry that we had to end the podcast, but we were out of time. So today we're going to start with pride, and we're going to move through pride up through courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy. And then we'll talk about peace and enlightenment. But honestly, peace and enlightenment is that's like, Dalai Lama level type of, thinking. Not saying you can't get there. And I feel like you can, but just know that, once we get to there, I'm not even so sure capitalism is even relevant anymore.
No.
So to be quite honest with everyone. So let's just jump in. We started off with anger. Let's talk about pride. Now, remember when we talk about the map of consciousness, neutrality is the line of demarcation. So meaning anything below neutrality is contraction, is fear or scarcity based, basically. That means disease is being created, you're moving, it's force. You're trying to force things when you're coming from those decision-making energy.
Yeah, if there's stress and anxiety and all those things.
Exactly.
Everybody knows that those are bad for you.
So when we're making decisions at that low vibration, at some point, it's a very scarcity-based decision, regardless. So it's not good or bad, but it's not optimized, right? And then neutrality is where we get to a point of like, it's neutral, it's not really contracting, but it's not expanding. And then when we move beyond neutrality into willingness and those other emotions, that's when we really begin to create and expand and build this wonderful, beautiful, love-based universe that's all around us.
Yeah. And the interesting thing that we've talked about is, last week, we've talked about business decisions, and we have samples of business decisions here, but you're also talking about personal decisions, and you're talking about the morality of yourself. And it's where your line is internally. And again, ethics is cultural, ethics is political, ethics has an infrastructure that is outside of your core, your soul. Morality is about your soul. Morality is inside of you. So let's talk about pride.
Just jump into pride. You kick it off, Denise.
I
don't have any pride. You can handle it.
I have comments about that I will not share.
No, we'll talk about it. We'll unpack that statement.
Yeah, we won't. We will not. Pride is the decision that you are making specifically tied to telling or demonstrating to others your own personal expertise, worth, or connection. So that's how we've kind of defined, and this is like a little check mark. Imagine it as you're making a decision, you've got all these 1 through 10 or 1 through whatever, and it's like, is the decision I'm making doing this? And if the answer is yes, well, you're doing it because of pride, and you've got a way to go to vibrate into something more positive. Because pride is really admiration, except you're taking credit for it.
Well, it's a very, very set in the ego, right? So there's a couple things. Pride as a word has always been a bit of a positive, generally a positive term, I would say. You taking pride in your work. I think that is a positive attribute, right? It's taking personal accountability and like, I want to do a good work. I take pride in myself, in the way I appear and everything else.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing.
I have a standard that I need to maintain for myself.
Totally. I think that's great. The problem is when it becomes a ego-driven entity, or creates separation, meaning we're better than you because we won this many Super Bowls and you guys haven't won any Super Bowl. right? Or we're rivals, or you know what
Well,
I'm saying?
yeah.
Like we see that in NFL. Pride is the energy that the NFL feeds on, in fact.
Mhm. The business example that we came up with is like if you're a team leader, but you did most of the work on this successful project. Okay, that happens. Happens to a lot of us. Happened in school. You do a group project and it's like other people didn't do anything. And because of your pride, you did it all.
Yes.
And then you make the decision to share how much you did with your supervisor. You're basically making the decision out of competitiveness. Is it truth or is it competitiveness? Is it the use of we or is it the use of I? It may be correct that you did all your work, but this is a decision of pride as it relates to, you know, you said it was complicated, especially as you get up, shame's easy, but you start getting up to some of these things in the middle and it's like, all right, am I proud of my children? Yes. Am I taking credit for my children? No, because they work their ass off and they are who they are. And, that makes me happy. But is that a bad thing? And do I take credit for it? It's a complex little puppy.
Well, playing sports as long as I have, and at the high level that I've had, it is a team sport, but you really are incentivized as an individual, right?
Oh,
Because
yes.
you got to play together as a team, but your individual performance is in sports can elevate you above the team, right? And it's the old saying, like, well, the team did poorly, but I did awesome. Like, team sucks, but I'm great. Those are all kind of prideful statements. And growing up in sports, I found myself when I went into the business world, just in general, full of this pride. And it was something that I actually had to work through. And I used to, when somebody would say, like, oh, that was a successful project. And yeah, there's a team, but then I would get caught, and it wasn't a negative intent. I'm not trying to step on anybody, but I was programmed in a lot of ways, and I'm not trying to take away accountability. I'm fully accountable, that I was catching myself saying, I did this, I did that, I did this. And Denise, if I ever do that, please just use the safe word, which is muskrat, by the way.
Yeah, I keep forgetting our safe word.
That's the safe word, muskrat. Everybody should have a safe word on their business team. When somebody's off the rails, if the other team members just says the safe word, then there should be no other words needed. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll just stop now. You know? So that's mine, at least, muskrat. So you're like, muskrat, Adam. So no, but it is a trap in society, and it is something that is, honored in American culture. And a lot of very group-based consensus Eastern cultures, which are more about the collective, will argue that this is one of the Western's culture's biggest downfalls.
It's certainly a shadow. I mean, I've talked in the past how all of this is lifelong for me. Whereas, Adam is, he wasn't there when he was 14. He had inklings, but he wasn't there when he was 14.
I wasn't searching for answers quite like you were, Denise.
Yes. So there was a point, and it was hard to do, but I managed to do it. I managed to do this where I didn't say the word I for 2 years. It was like a practice, and you had to switch all the sentences around to accommodate it. And then I read the Fountainhead, and then I started to say I all the time. That truly was what made me say I all the time. And then I have a happy medium now. But I still try to reframe and restructure. I mean, you think about writing an email to someone, and if you look at your first draft, all of it is about you. It's pretty common. And so then you see emails come from people where it's like, and I think this, and then I went here, and then I like, it is central to narcissism.
Well, and think about just pride, even a step further. It's your unwillingness to lose an argument in a business environment. That's pride.
Oh, yeah. I got that last word.
Having to be right is definitely a pride-based decision.
I got a little bit of that. I
Oh
have
yeah,
the
Denise, you
last
do. You do.
I have to
I've
have
seen it shown its hand a few times, but I mean, I'm not like that. So, and Denise is a very skilled practitioner of this. First she's aware of what we're talking about, which is more than most people, and me too. But we all find ourselves at different parts of this because we're human. We're having a human experience, right? And these are all um, features of this human experience. So emotional part of this experience. So these are all real energies. These are not
Mhm,
lies or anything.
mhm.
It's just that knowing where you are and knowing to pull back or not make a decision when you're in this sort of energy, that's when you truly become conscious of yourself.
Yes, and it is pretty common, and this was certainly a pandemic thing, but uh, when people go through different life stages, their world collapses and becomes really small.
Mm,
The pandemic made worlds very small. It was you and whomever was in your bubble. And when the world gets big, you realize that you are not the center of the universe. When your world gets small, you tend to use the pronoun that we shall not say more often. So
yes.
that's something that you can certainly, this is all a practice. One of the ways to get over that is to make your world bigger. How do you make your world bigger? Well, get out, learn about other cultures, learn about, other people's problems, help out, find charitable work to do, because there are a lot more people in the world than just you.
Well, and then somebody who's really studying this, like you said, I mean, getting out there, but that idea of I am, right? I am
Yeah,
great. I am wonderful. That's
I am
totally
is a big honking deal,
that is so like that's your infinite being. So like don't confuse when you say I
Yeah,
am wealthy, I am strong, I am great as
yes.
pride, because that's not pride.
No.
Those that is actually, I always ask this when I'm giving sort of consciousness development or consciousness training. I ask people, what's the most powerful word? Some people say love, very powerful word. Some people say thank you. That's a very gratitude, very powerful word. But it's really any word that follows I am.
Mhm.
Any word that follows I am.
And
So
yes.
go ahead.
And if you look at if you look or re-listen to the definition that we gave first of all, is how are you using the word? Is
Mhm.
pride happening? Is the motivation behind it um like we're going to demonstrate my personal expertise, my
Yeah.
personal worth, or my connection, as in, oh, I'm really proud of my kids. That's a connective use of it. If the intent is to take credit for them. So
Yep.
what is the intent?
Yep. Yep. And that's great because if you're having a argument, if that's the wrong term, but a debate, a collegial debate with a business partner and colleague, and you're really adamant on something, if you're not, you know, having a backbone and standing up for what you believe is totally acceptable. But when you're doing it to protect your ego, that's pride,
Yes. Yes.
right? All right. So
Have
everybody
we
gets
killed
pride, I
pride
think.
here? Have we killed it? And are
Yeah,
we
we've definitely hit it. We keep talking about pride for another hour and a half at least. So let's move next. So once you've moved beyond pride, and you've gotten over the idea of pride, most of the time, you find yourself, you can start moving into the courage vibration of energy.
Mhm.
And what is courage, Denise?
Well, in our little checklist, we said, which starts with is the decision the origin of the decision you're making and where you come from. Is the decision that you are making putting you at risk for reputational damage or physical harm? Because, and let's just talk about the example here. And it's like, you're a CEO, your reputation is informed by the decisions that you make personally. And as a representative of the company, is that a decision based on a personal moral code that other people may not necessarily share, or a legal ethic? And do you have the courage to step out? And do you have the courage? Where is the intent of the decision?
Right. Courage is really that first step out of scarcity and fear. Like that's when you really kind of move beyond the ego, or at least try to step beyond it. You're not out of it yet. You're still basing a lot of what you're doing on fear. You're still afraid. You're still scared. You're still...
Courage doesn't exist unless fear exists.
Yeah. So you're still in a fear-based vibration. But the best, most positive thing about courage is you're stepping out of it. You're transitioning. So it's not like you want to stay in sort of just courage because you're still scared, but you're doing it in beyond it, right? You're doing it in fact. And I'm not talking about saying having the courage to fight a war or anything like that. I'm talking about in a business context where you're maybe going into the unknown, where there are no known results and you have no idea, you've never been there before, and everything, all your dials and dashboards and instincts are telling you to back down, but you want it, you believe it, you feel for it, and you're able to overcome that fear, and that's courage. So
we're in the advertising and marketing business, and the strategy and business development, business strategy business. And people ask all the time, what makes a good client? Well, they don't ask all the time, but I wish they did. What makes a good client? Well, one of the things that makes a good client at a good client agency relationship is when the client has courage. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, all the marketing is defined by what the client knows to be familiar. And people in the advertising and marketing business, this is we learn about this, we live this, we have decades of experience with this. This is what we read in our spare time. And you can't expect someone client side to do it like we do it. That's not their job. That's our job.
Well, especially because, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but most people in the corporations are not playing in this or understanding about consciousness in general and karmic perspective. Like you can't expect somebody to have that sort of shadow work done, and a lot of times they work for somebody else who is stuck in this old decision thinking.
Right. They're afraid. They're afraid of making decisions outside of, nobody gets fired for hiring IBM. Yep. They're afraid to take a step. And what happens is if you don't take a step, you pretty much remain in the past, because life is moving. Marketing and advertising is moving. It's all moving so fast that you can't keep up. And if you're afraid to follow the lead of the agency, if you don't have that courage, you're going to be left behind, because it's all about courage. That agency relationship, being a good client is rooted in listening.
Well, and being a good team member too, right? Because you can't. Well, I mean, I think the real key challenge for everyone is, we're having this discussion. I don't think this discussion has ever happened before, by the way, other than in time's infinite time. Yes, it has happened, and we've done this before, but that's more of a quantum physics perspective. But step away from quantum physics and Albert Einstein. at this time, people, the business community is not really having this discussion. I mean, we're leading this, but that should make you realize that most people are operating from a place of courage and below. So when you talk to anybody on the street or a teammate or anyone, even if you've moved and you're operating from love, you've got to remember that their belief system or their lens of what they're making decisions could be, and most likely falls on courage or below, which is all fear-based. So if you're a very good leader, you have to help bring their care, almost hold your hand out and have them cross the chasm or over the bridge from courage into actually over neutrality and into willingness.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that. So courage, I feel like everybody kind of gets. Let's get into neutrality, because this is when things start to separate from contraction to expansion.
Okay, so remember those like questions in the little boxes. So neutrality, is it the decision that you are making? Does that support affirmation, feasibility, and balance in its outcome? So I love this one because there's so much in it that is a framework for decision making that you feel okay with and aren't guilty about. So let's just say you're a CEO and you have to support a sustainable P&L, and you have to eliminate people from your payroll. And these people, this is their job. It's a heavy weight. The crown is heavy in a business. But the concept of reorganizing a business for its own health is really important. So
the old saying of, hey, don't take this personal, it's just business, is a neutrality type of, I would say, a neutrality type of statement.
Right. But we argued, I think we brought up that in the past, like maybe in the last episode. It's like, where does it come from? Does it come from, just saying, okay, I'm gonna do this and I'm not gonna be responsible for it? Or does it come from true neutrality?
True. Great point. I mean, you're right. I mean, that if somebody's just neutrality and using an old adage because it's an easy excuse, even though they're really fearful in doing it, and that's why they're doing it. But like, hey, don't take it personal. It's just business. I'm doing this because I'm afraid that you're going to take something from me. Then it's definitely, that's not neutrality. That's actually fear, right? Yeah. That's going back to fear or desire or grief or anger. True neutrality separates. An individual separates themselves from the emotions, both a negative and a positive sort of emotion on a decision, like a very academic sort of math logic. This is like a logic-based decision-making process. Like, well, the data says this. I don't want to do this, but the data says this, so we're going to do this because I feel like this is going to work because of this. But it's not like you're bringing forward that emotion. You're trying to separate emotion one way or the other from it's neutrality.
Yeah. And this is where one of my favorite sayings comes from that I have learned in this business. I learned this in the business, and I learned it actually working with creative people, because creative people are interesting people. They are a little different, and they think of their thinking process.
By the way, Denise and I was a studio art major, started my career as a designer and a creative, and same with Denise. So we are part of the club when we're
part of the club. We get you. But they'll come up with an idea that, they believe in, they've processed. And instead of saying no, like, oh, because I know the client said this about that, or that's not going to work because I'm I'm making the decision for you. You have to find ways to say yes. And finding a way to say yes is something that I've always like led my life by, in modern times, since working with creative people, because often that's how you get the great stuff. Finding a way to say yes from a no gets you the greatness. That's where great comes from, not good.
Well, and the other part is that point of, as a great creative, although it is personal because all creatives we put a piece of us in all of our work,
Oh,
right? I think everybody does.
yeah.
Like in anything you do, if you're good at what you do put a piece of yourself into it,
Yeah.
right?
Writers quibble over commas.
And exactly. And so when a client's like, I hate this piece of work, and a great creative is like, okay, let's unpackage that. Why don't you like it? And it's a very kind of calm, neutral conversation. Ones that are scared or fear or pride are the ones like, you're just stupid. You don't know what you're doing, right?
Or I'll know it when I see it, which is
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah. Okay.
okay, you are the king or queen, and you'll know
It just we've seen, we've come across creative directors that are very defensive about their work, and that shows me that they're very low vibration type of entities, right? So okay, so that's neutrality. So now at a point you're no longer contracting, but you're not expanding. You're just status, just sitting there, and you're doing okay, right? But now let's move up. Let's start creating abundance for ourselves, Denise. Let's talk about willingness. That's next.
Oh, willingness, tied to courage. Courage develops into willingness because you get confident that you're going to be okay.
Right. And being okay is, the best way to understand you're going to be okay is to understand you're an infinite being, and the universe is conspiring for you, not against you, and your thoughts are reality, all that stuff. But say you're not there, willingness from more of a somebody used the term the other day, more of a normie's perspective, and I don't like that term, but like for people that are not really practicing or aware, but are just kind of mindfulness, kind of surface level individuals that are more on the conscious level. So what does willingness mean?
Is the decision that you are making on behalf of moving forward in a positive future. If you are willing to try something or do something, it means you've already made the decision to be positive. Because if you're willing, you're not moving down. You're moving up.
And when you say you're willing, we're not talking about it. You say, okay, hey, I'm willing to try. I'm willing to try. And I think the key difference is somebody who has apathy is they can appear like they're being willing, but they're like, I just don't care. Whatever. You decide. I'm willing to try, but because I just don't care anymore.
Right.
That's apathy. I'm willing to try because, okay, I want to share this abundance. I want to take a chance. I feel like this, I feel good about potentially taking a step out and applying for this new job, this new company, or this new position with the same company, or willingness to even, talk to an executive that I never talked to before, or build a new relationship, or just try something different because what I've been doing hasn't been working, right? That's like a positive step forward versus I don't care anymore, nothing works. That's apathy.
It's very optimistic. And the example that, we have here is, say you're a director level person and your interns come to you and have an idea for process improvement within your department. And process improvement and infrastructure in most businesses is like moving a mountain to do anything different. So,
and God bless those who love doing it.
And yes, thank you. We couldn't live without you. However,
minus the bureaucracy, we don't need the bureaucracy.
So you make the decision to let them test the process in a manner that doesn't disable the current process. So you're making a decision. It's like, okay, let's do it. Find ways to say yes. And that optimism is infectious.
Yeah.
It absolutely is a vibration that can bring people that are not you up.
You know, it's you know, in different countries or different levels of this as a collective, as you can imagine. Um, and it's not saying that one country is better than another. I'm not saying good or bad or any of that stuff, but I'm saying that certain cultures are at a vibration, stuck at a certain vibratory level. And, you know, when doing work in Europe, there is, you know, I would say from my experience in several years and really my entire career, I've done a lot of work in Europe and I love my EU friends and everything else. But when you're in a business meeting, say in Germany versus one in concepting a new idea versus one in the United States people, Americans are very optimistic. And that makes sense because that's our culture. We were people that had the willingness to leave the known place where their family was to the unknown. So that's why I do say that the US has an unfair advantage on the rest of the world, because it automatically, by default, operates at a higher frequency of vibration because it's who we are as a soul level. And that's why we've moved to the US, the land of opportunity. Whether it still is, that's debatable, but certainly I believe it is. And when you're in a meeting, say a German meeting, they're, first off, one of the most productive countries in the world, and it built tremendous things and created tremendous companies and tremendous people. And I have a lot of great friends, but it's tough. Like you would spend, if it was an hour meeting, Denise, I would probably spend I would present the idea of what we're trying to accomplish, right? Wouldn't necessarily have solutions, but we're trying willingness, right? To do something different, to try something new. And I would get probably 45 minutes of why it won't work. Literally and masterfully, right? Like masters of it. I mean, and then it would be like, okay, now we have 10 minutes. Now we got to figure out how we're going to make it work, guys, because we are going to. And maybe there's force, you know, from my experience, it was probably a little bit too forceful on that. Not that I'm like, you're going to get fired. If not, I'm just not that person. But what I would be like, okay, now you have to figure out a way to make this work. I'm forcing you into a willingness because you're just not there. And now were they really willing? And no, because they were still based on, and then it kind of went from forced willingness turned into apathy, you know, pretty quickly. So I learned from that, but just be aware, you know, there are people listening to us potentially all over the world. Know that each country, you know, you have each community, even in the United States. You know, I've had experiences at all parts of the US, just in those styles, right?
Oh yeah.
Americans are very much more optimistic, right? But I would say West Coast people are more optimistic than East Coast people. And East Coast is closer to Europe than the West Coast is, right? It's almost like keep going west, you get more liberal and more open and everything else. And I'm an East Coast kid. I love East Coast. I love the West Coast, but I prefer to live on the East Coast because of the history and everything else. And I look at myself less conservative in many ways and more of a West Coast type of vibe. But I can tell you, even culturally, East Coast is much more
it's very different.
The lower, the fear-based frequency than the more upper positive love-based side.
Right.
But
I mean,
they have that too on the West Coast.
Yeah. People, when you deal with people from the East Coast, you know, you get clients from all over the country.
And you're in the middle, so you get to play both sides, right?
Yeah, we get to play both sides.
Denise is in Wisconsin.
But we laugh because like East Coast clients or even people who come from the East Coast who move here are all yes, no, get to the point.
Direct.
Here's 5 answers for you in one sentence, and you're off. They're very direct. They're very black. They're very white. They don't play in the gray at all. And then you have a West Coast client and they're like so laid back. that they don't even look at a clock and know what time it is.
Yeah.
Because they're on a different time.
Well, it's
schedule
because
than the
they're
rest of
still
the country, and they
yeah.
milk that.
Well, I was gonna say they have the thinner part of the veil, meaning there's no time on the other side. So they're like, well, this is all temporary here, anyways. What do I need time? There's no time.
I have a
on the other
deadline. I
side.
need an answer. And then I'm like, oh, all right.
Well, it's funny.
So it's very hard to combine those work styles and have relationships that are productive. But
and then there's the term us East Coasters like to call Minnesota nice or Midwest nice.
Oh yeah, we're super nice.
Which is well, is not quite what you think it means.
You're going to go to the shadow of the
No. I'm just saying from experience, since we're talking about cultures and sort of styles. East Coast is overly direct for some people, and it's scary for some West Coast people, like overburdening, like a bulldozer or a bull in a china shop. And I totally agree. I mean, I'm from a New Yorker family, so just we'll leave it there. My wife's family's from a Boston family, so so we're extremely direct on everything.
Yeah.
And I'll be direct about the indirectness of the central part of the United States. And it drives East Coasters nuts because when you sit in a meeting, you're like, okay, we're good. Everybody's like, oh, it's good. And they're like, man, Midwesterners, they're so nice. But they're nice to your face, but they're going to go and do something different behind your back because they don't like confrontation.
We don't like confrontation. We prefer passive aggressiveness.
Yeah, the most passive aggressive part of the country, in my humble opinion. And that's why we used to say Midwest nice. Really passive aggressive, everyone. They're passive aggressive.
We wear it proud. We will confuse you with, you have to read our minds. We will confuse you, but we're going to we'll get our way in the end.
Yes. Well, I grew up in a New Yorker household, and passive aggressive would get you in the doghouse pretty quickly. Shut up and get it out of your mouth already. What are you trying to say? Don't, anyway.
I have to say, we live like this. If you can't, especially certain cities like Milwaukee is really nice and welcoming, and people come to.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. Like all parts of the country. I mean, I feel like the Americans are probably the most open, welcoming society on this planet. Honestly,
Chicagoans are not.
They have a bit of an East Coast to them, don't they?
They have East Coast to them. We call them Flatlanders, and they have a whole different way of doing business. And those of us from Wisconsin and Minnesota have some issues with them.
But see, it's so funny, right? All the cultural differences, and they're wonderful. I mean, if you go to Europe, similar things like Germany and the Dutch. Well, the Dutch are the most direct, I think, on the planet, frankly. They just won't let you do anything, and we'll jump back into decision making here in a second.
I don't even know where we are.
But French are very very indirect in their style, right? Mm-hmm. So much more Midwestern, and so there. I think it's styles or preferences, their cultures, just like everything else. Just as long as we are making decisions based on a map of consciousness, your style, indirect, direct, a mix of the two. I think the only issue is when you leave somebody like in an unknowing sort of state, and I think that's unfair, and that happens in both ways, by the way, because family members of mine, some of them are very direct New Yorkers, but when it comes to making tough decisions, like especially terminating an employee, they rather silent fire you rather than anything. They're just going to make you feel obsoleted because they don't want to fire you because that's direct, and they don't want to be in confrontation. So I just mean non-confrontational follows all over the map, and it's not how that is. But non-confrontation is because you're making decisions based on fear. Mm-hmm. So as we move up, we're past that though. So let's get back into it. So when we're in willingness, we're in willingness to really having that optimism, that willingness to have this conversation, the willingness to have a conversation teasing each other about Midwest nice versus East Coast direct, like bull in a china shop. it's an observation, like, and that's a very neutral observation. There's no like emotion to it. I think it's hilarious, actually. How,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and fascinating. It can be annoying
Mhm.
sometimes, I wish, but I've learned to accept it and appreciate it, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff everyone can learn from each other. So, and that goes into
Right.
accepting.
It goes into acceptance.
So that's next. So acceptance is accepting all of these things, right? It's the decision that you are making for the purpose of forgiving, for the purpose forgiving, to bring a feeling of relief to someone else who may be living in a lower vibration. It's the idea that you're like, okay, that person is making fear-based decisions and I accept this. Or it's this is really not going the way I planned, but I'm not going to be afraid. I accept it, and we're going to move through this together,
Mhm.
right? And there's a lot of people that don't ever get to acceptance, and that the other acceptance is, I would say, it's just the point of accepting the law of vibration in so many
Yeah.
ways. This
Yeah.
is the way things work, so we need to accept this and move on.
Yes. And, the underlying emotion in acceptance is respect. And, you do need to recognize and respect other people
Mhm.
for coming from their
Completely.
culture, coming from their ethic, coming from their morality as you make decisions, because um, it, respect comes in a lot of ways. I personally, some people kind of say, oh, radical candor is respect. And I'm like, okay. And if for you those of you who don't know what radical candor is, it's a kind of a movement, especially in business, but also
It's called
personal.
Dutch culture.
Yeah.
The Dutch are radical candor, no
Yeah.
question.
It's like we're gonna tell you the truth no matter, or our version of your truth, or our implication of truth, because we know what it is and you don't.
Mm,
So
mm.
I'm going to radically be candor to you, saying it's like, Adam, your haircut is really bad this week.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. I
It's
accept that.
not, but that's an example. It's not. I like your hair this week.
Thank you. I appreciate it. No, but
Um,
I accept other people's opinions. No, that's the acceptance piece, right? Diversity, accepting diversity is, it's like every time somebody says, "Oh, no, they're different. We don't like them." First, we're all connected. Second, the universe loves diversity. That's the point. Diversity of experience. The universe is experiencing itself, God, whatever we want to say, experiencing itself through you, through your soul, through this. And it's like this whole laddering up of knowledge that's going back to the source. And we're kind of, pieces of that source. And it wants as many diverse experiences as possible. So, because that's how we all learn. So,
mhm.
diversity and acceptance of those diversities of opinions, outcomes, the potential unknown, acceptance of the unknown. I think that's the most critical part here. This is
Oh,
where you're accepting the
yes.
unknown. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to stay positive and abundant through this process because I know it's going to work out. I got to let go. It's like letting go. Like it's
Yes.
almost like letting. This is like the stage of letting go. Like
Yeah.
just let go.
People with control issues have some problems here,
Yes.
because it takes control away from you, and surrender is part of everything that happens now.
Yes.
Everything that happens now is about surrendering your ego and surrendering control of situations, and control of discussions, and control of everything.
And,
And
and
you know, Jesus isn't your co-pilot, he's your pilot. It would be the vernacular of religion in that.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, it is letting go and say letting God or letting the universe or whatever we want to say, and that surrender piece. And it's also, so from a business perspective, if you're a true karmic capitalist and a leader, when somebody comes up with a new idea, even if the idea has been thought of before, or like that won't happen or it can't happen. And the person's got energy and they've got that willingness and that sort of, they represent that the fool card type of in tarot reading, right? That newness of there's something, a new opportunity. And you shut it down because, oh, it won't work or it's terrible. What if you just said, you know what? If you have the resources to achieve it, or even I found even when you don't have the resources, you'll find a way if it's the right thing. You just accept it. Just say, all right, great, let's try this. We're just going to try it, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Now we've gotten even a little bit closer to the final answer. It's that acceptance of the potential of it not working or it working great, but you don't care because you're not worried.
You're not worried. And people, I mean, that concept of worry is really the ego again. That ego just comes back all the time.
It's designed in us, right?
Yeah, in its different forms.
I mean, it's beautiful. Love your ego, but understand what it is.
Yeah. There's one thing. Okay, I mentioned the.
It's like our avatars, right? This is a video game. It's our avatar.
It's our avatar. Yeah,
I designed this avatar.
There's I do have an avatar. Did you see it? I changed my
Oh no, I'll have to check it out.
Okay. But it's the one thing I took a lot of things away from the Fountainhead, which, for a extraordinarily liberal person, I do think that book has been misrepresented and taken on by people who never read it as meaning something and as representative of something. But there's a real distinction in there about the term egotist and egoist. And the Fountainhead is about being an egoist, not an egotist, which as an egoist, acceptance is absolutely positively, the willingness, the acceptance, the surrender, all of that is possible. As an egotist, it's not.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to think about those two terms and pull them apart, because there are two sides to it. Being I am is an egoist statement, and it's a very positive thing for a person, and it has a positive influence on an individual. I am is not an egotist.
And if you can't love yourself, you can't love others. So when you can't even get to love without acceptance, like obviously, right? We're not there yet. So acceptance is on the way to love of true, abundance and unconditional love.
And I'm always the whole unconditional love, and we're going to talk about love, and we could talk for the rest of eternity about love. But I've always been, people talk about romantic love and the love between a man and a woman, even though, there's lots of other love. But that whole, I always thought you don't change people. I always, it's like accept people for who they are and accept them for the path that they're on. And don't try to change them and turn them into something that you.
Well, you can't change somebody because that's your vibration, right? So the only way you're going to change someone else's vibration, first, you may never, and that means, but you got to change your vibration and your decision thinking first. And then once you do that, you'll attract others in that vibratory sense.
Exactly.
So this is why you see couples outgrow each other, because one person might be moving to, say, a higher consciousness or different beliefs or anything else, and another doesn't. You accepting them for all of their points. Some people never make it all the way up this ladder. I mean, eventually your soul will, because that's the purpose of it, to move up this.
Unless reincarnation cuts you off, but that's another.
Right. But I think I'm just saying, though, it's like that acceptance of surrender, the acceptance that there are service to self people on this planet. There's acceptance that you are a piece of a bigger thing, the ecosystem, and things need to move, and there's divine timing on things. Even if you are
Oh, yeah.
positive and perfectly aligned, and you're like, why isn't this happening? I'm doing everything right, Adam. I'm doing
Divine
everything right.
timing. Yeah, that's a
But
business thing.
divine timing is part of it. Timing and things, the universe is helping you, but it's moving other things around because you've got all these other things moving. And it just shows you how perfect the universe and how complex and how smart and intelligent, and like, that's the acceptance piece, and the acceptance that you might be wrong on this
Yeah,
decision, and it's okay.
and it's
Or somebody else might be okay, and they fail. That's okay, because it's not a failure, right?
it's not
So
a failure.
so then, and when you get through acceptance, you can start to kind of move into reason, right? So reason
Mhm.
is next. So
Is
share a
the
little bit about reason, Denise.
Yeah, and reason's a tricky one because of our interpretation of the word reason.
Mhm.
So we need to break that down because there's lots of definitions for reason, and people may think that it is um, logic based or data based or something like that. Okay, so is the decision that you are making linked to trying to understand a reason why something happened, or to uncover deeper meaning and look at why something exists, and tacking on reason why um, gives reason uh, a different spin than just talking about reason like Aristotle's reason.
Mhm.
I'm not an Aristotle fan, by the way, but whatever. He's dead now. But so um, it's like you have to find the reason why something is happening because you don't know. You don't know everything. If you're an egotist, you think you do. And the example here is you're a department leader who notices that an employee takes a lot of emergency time off. It's like, okay, you could be a hard ass and go out. It's like you're taking a lot of time off, or you could figure out why, and that relates to tolerance and acceptance.
Yeah,
Maybe they have a really, really, really good reason.
and a great way to think about, reason, acceptance is forgiveness.
Yes,
This is when you're in forgiveness phase.
tied to forgiveness.
And so both of these are kind of in that bit of that middle forgiveness. Like, you're still learning to forgive here. You're you're
Hmm.
you're you're hopeful, you're optimistic. It, but if anybody is going through this decision path, it's hard to make decisions based off this when everybody else is at a lower vibration, because they don't understand your decision making.
Oh God,
You're like,
yeah.
you're so naive. How could you think this way? We've got to protect ourselves. And especially when you talk to lawyers, right? Like, they're like, no. And you're like, no, that's not,
They
I don't
live
want to
in
trap
they live
this,
in fear. Fear is their job.
right?
Yeah.
Or just in general, right? Business executives are taught to really de-risk things. I mean, in publicly traded companies, CEOs are not rewarded for innovation and doing new things. They're
No.
rewarded for it not failing on their watch. So their
Exactly.
whole perspective is, don't let it fail. Don't let it fail. And if you're focused on failure, of not letting it fail, this is why most American companies don't get past 100 years, in many ways, right?
Right,
So
because they're playing defense all the time and they're masters of defense, while other companies like sneak up from behind. They don't see them coming and they're playing offense.
and if you make decisions, right, like based on past events or some bad actor that mistreated you, or you see this, you unfortunately you see this in a lot of I'll say this, women in leadership roles, where they've had to been cutthroat because of the men and the environment around them.
Yes.
And it's sad, because that's a low vibration, but that was a survival technique, and
Yeah.
you see it less and less now. But I would say, Denise, your generation, a lot of that, you're in your leadership, you see it around you. It's a very hard edge to things because they've been hardened and it's not their fault. It just means that they haven't learned to forgive all of those people that didn't know better. Right.
Well,
I'm not a woman, so I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying it's an observation. You know,
and
I'm just trying to say that it's
the thing about all that and the lean in and the
Yes.
women's corporate movement has had a lot of opinion in it on how to be successful. And some of the opinion is you gotta be like a man in order to be successful.
Or be like the old men who ran the old versions
and
of capitalism.
play their game
right?
and win at their game.
Right.
Okay. 51% of the population under the sky is women. So if you go to origin, it's like, why is the baseline masculine? Okay, you've put a nickel in me. So I apologize for going off course here, but why is the baseline masculine? The baseline should not be masculine. And if you're going to play that game, the baseline should be feminine. If you're going to play that game, which means that all of the rules and regulations of legacy business and legacy sports and legacy everything is based on men. And
the good old boy club. That's where we get that.
The good old boy club. And, okay, not all women golf, but that's where business is done. And, you have to learn to golf. And
I like golf, but man, what a waste of time for business meetings. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah,
but I'm not making fun of golf because I accept it. And there's a lot of people that love spending their whole day playing it. Totally.
Yeah.
Same people that like not seeing their families, but that's okay. I'll say it.
Not seeing your families. I mean, if women ruled the baseline, everyone in business would have more flexibility. Everyone in business would see their families more and have a different prioritization of what is important. Everyone in business would conduct themselves with the same kind of men are hunters, women are gatherers. They look at the entire landscape and say, how do I put this all together? Men are hunters, and they walk into a store and they hunt what they want, and then they walk out. And you know what? We should be the baseline.
I think the baseline is neutrality, but that's okay. I think it's balance. I think you need balance. And there's a lot of studies now in archaeology that are finding out that we were actually a matriarchal society.
Yes, thank you.
And it went too far on the matriarch side, just like it's gone too far on the patriarch side. So what we had a backlash, and then the pendulum swang the other side to the extreme. And now we're coming out of the patriarch swing of the pendulum, and we're coming back to a more equilibrium state. That's where we should be, because we can't, modern science, I guess you can have kids without one or the other counterparts now. And I believe there's a study out there that are going to be allowing men to have kids and birth children as well. But it's that duality, that polarity that's got to come together, the yin and the yang, for it to be beautiful, right? We don't get a coin can't have three sides without two sides, right? So just think about that, right?
Yeah. And, truth, you talked about that. And it reminded me of something that I do in strategic planning with the coin and the two sides. It's like I always put drawing on a board. Truth is in the middle, and then the perspective of everyone in an organization is a 360 around it, looking at that same truth and viewing it differently. The same truth is viewed differently by an HR person as it is a security person, as it is a COO, as it is a salesperson. The same truth is viewed through the eyes of the person viewing it. So this idea of acceptance and understanding and learning about other people's motivation is really central to making good decisions that are up the ladder.
And I think a really important part about reason is you're not jumping to conclusions.
Right.
Because you're open that even if history has shown that this has happened every time, it only means it will happen. I mean, there is wisdom. So the fine line of trying to find wisdom versus living in the past and bringing the past results forward, right? And there's certain things like don't walk on a crowded street with a bunch of cars and not expect to get hit by a car or something like that. But
see, I would call the basis of wisdom understanding these central vibrations. Wisdom isn't necessarily the teachings of a culture. That's
right.
not wisdom. That's information or knowledge. Wisdom is something else, and I think wisdom lives in the vibration cone.
I feel like you're wise when you know your actions are based into different vibrations and such, and where you are, and you can sense that, you can feel it, and you can talk to yourself in a way that you can logically work it through, right? The problem,
Yes.
or
Yes, I freaking love this spectrum. It answers so.
Dr. David Hawkins, I know you're not with us, but you are with us.
You are with us, and I give props to you.
Good work.
Sir. Good work.
It
makes so much sense. You can answer everything out of it.
So let's move on to love.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're getting some really exciting levels.
Yeah. Love is the decision you are making factoring a reverence for your relationship with another person or living thing or the earth or an ideal. Love is a relationship, and is that relationship part of your moral imperative? And we talked about ethics and morality, and your moral imperative is you, and love comes from you.
Well, and so let's think about this. This is love of all. So there's a key issue. So let me play a scenario in business, right? Or I'll just use countries as an example so that people can relate it. We're just going to say Putin in Russia loves Russia. Okay, loves Russia. I love Russia. I love it so much that we need to protect ourselves. And Ukraine and the rest of NATO, and Ukraine's not part of NATO, and NATO, they're going to hurt us. So I love you guys so much. We're going to go fight them. That is not what we're talking about. No. That is actually fear and scared and pride and all love would be, I see the beauty in their culture. I see what they're trying to do. I see our differences. I am trying to accept them and love them for all of their issues and beautifulness and I will not make a decision. I won't go invading because I won't allow myself to come from a fear-based level, because I love it. I love it, love the idea that Ukraine and its people and its cultures, even if they're Nazis, like Keith says they are, that, right? Yeah, exactly. So yeah. What other propaganda he wants to say to give him a moral reason for doing what he's doing. But that's not love, right? So love is unconditional. It is seeing. It's not necessarily like we talk about lust. It's a romantic. So let's talk about. There's so many different variations of love.
Yeah, and
but it's rooted on acceptance.
It is, and it's also. I'm going to suggest here, because I've thought a lot about love, and everyone tries to psychoanalyze love, and they try to infuse reason with love. And I go back to everybody's favorite crackpot existentialist, which is Nietzsche. And I read a lot of Nietzsche. I like Nietzsche. And he said, love is enveloped by the soul. Mm-hmm. The soul actually is love. And I also looked up a psychological definition by a blogger, but he was a scientist, and it was in like Psychology Today, or I don't know, it was in some journal. And he said that love can happen in like 5/8 of a second. He put a quantification on it, which to me is like, okay, it happens in your soul. And yes, I had love at first sight. You know, my husband walked in the door and I said out loud, "Oh, I'm in trouble." And I was. I do believe that love, we use the word love for so many different things that it has, it's made the word be, you know, it doesn't have the power that it should have.
Yeah, like loving war, right? I mean, no, that's
You
not.
know,
So here's this real scenario. I'd like everybody who's listening to try this. I know we're in the holiday season. You can do it there, or it doesn't matter, just in a crowded place, which is normally like, oh, there's lines. Like, so when you go to the mall, like if you are going to shopping to the mall, and bless you if you are, but if you are going to the mall and doing some shopping, you know, when you walk in and there's lines and people are like rushing around, and we should have done this before Black Friday when I'm sure there was mobs of people. Just imagine that everyone in the store is your best friend. Like literally, like you guys are all, you know, like best friends. Like just put it in that emotion. Like think about if they were like, put your best friends and family that you love's faces on everybody and just pretend the room is like full. Like, and just sit in it. And then you'll be like, wow, this is amazing. Like I ask people to do this exercise when they fly planes. I think I talked about this on an earlier episode. But when you get on a plane, if you're traveling, get on a plane and sit in your seat and look at everybody and be like, oh, we're best friends, and pretend like you're best friends with everybody, and like really get yourself to believe it. Like, man, that person is cool. That I love that person. Like, they're so funny. Like, even if you don't know any of these people, but just because you do, technically you do on the other side. Everybody's connected. Everybody, there's a knowingness, there's a collective thought. But just pretend that. And then you'll get a closest to a sense about what love, really having unconditional love for everybody and knowing everyone's connected on this planet. You will have the best plane ride. You will have everything will work out for you too. It'll be like perfectly magical. It just looking around, like even if you're stuck in the middle seat, be like, wow, I'm so lucky for being stuck in the middle to my two best friends. Like, they're so great. No, don't go hugging them because they might creep you out. They might, you know, be upset with you. But like, just hold that feeling, and you'd be like, oh, even if they start, you know, sleeping on your shoulder and everything, oh, that's sweet. They feel comfortable sleeping on my shoulder. You know, I just like try to bring that in, and then you get a kind of a sense of really what love, like the decision to make decisions based on love really looks like. And it makes it's a weird out of body experience when you've done that the first time, when you go on a plane to feel that way. And it's like, everybody is like, oh, this is a party. So all of our friends, we're all here. This is awesome. We're on a plane together, right? Just imagine
I'd like
that.
to see you in the center seat.
Was that?
I'd like to see you in the middle seat.
Oh, yeah, I've been stuck there. It's not fun, but you know, and I did not have this perspective. Yeah, I was like, you know, like the last middle seat when you're trying to get on a plane, when you know your connection flight has been canceled or whatever. You're trying to get home
a
from
very
a business
negative
meeting.
vibe. It's like, look at this big guy. He's 6'4" and he's coming out.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. But the nice thing about the middle seat, everybody should know, if you have the middle seat, they get both armrests. That's the deal. If the person's stuck in the middle, you should give your left. If you're on the right side, you give their left armrest to them, and then you're on the window side. If you're on if that's the side you're on, then your right armrest, because the middle seat, I'm sorry, that's etiquette, gets the armrests.
Yeah, in New Zealand, they're actually doing lotteries for middle seats. So in every plane ride, you get a like a little ticket, and you're put into a lottery for like $100,000. You know, it's pretty cool.
That's cool. It's really cool.
It actually is cool, because it reframes the concept of something bad into something good.
That's the perception of everything, right? And that's what we create.
There is tons of research too on, if you go into the weekend, and this is like the self-hypnotist thing which works. It's what we're talking about. It's like retraining your brain at a cellular level. If you go into the weekend thinking it's your 2-day vacation, you have a much better time on your weekend than you do if you go into the weekend thinking, I am going to do all the drudgery that I didn't get to during the week. And I'm going to clean and do it. Like, if you go into it thinking it's a 2-day vacation, people report it elevates happiness significantly.
Well, so we do need to find somebody that's studying and been researching the 4-day work week, because I think that's a fascinating idea.
Thank you. There's a TED Talk on that talks about it. So I will forward this to you, Adam.
Yeah, and we'll see if we can get the TED Talk speaker on one of our episodes next year.
Very compelling case.
So love, that's love. We talked about love. When you're in a vibratory sense of unconditional love, making decisions or not. I think everybody can feel that. Now we move to joy, because that's what you experience after you get to that level, right? So let's talk about joy. We're limited on time, but we'll finish this up and then we'll talk a little bit of preview of what's going on next year, and then I got a guided meditation for us, Denise. So we might go a little bit over today, but if you need to hop off, you can listen to the end of the show and recordings, and we're always recorded, and you can always listen to us later. All right, Denise. So let's hop into joy.
Joy. The decision that you are making part of a feeling of happiness, that all is right with the world, and that sharing this joy and feeling this joy is actually a proof point for abundance. Joy is abundance.
It is
no lack of anything. And it is really curious to me that all over the world, this time of year, in every culture, there is a celebration, and the celebrations are based in joy. We actually see the word joy all over the place in the United States.
Joy to the world.
Joy to the world. We hear it. We see it. It's on Christmas cards. It's in malls. They got a big joy thing. Joy is an interesting collaborative vibration that, everybody feels really cool in the holiday season. And it's like, oh, this is okay. Well, we can experience that all the time if we surrender to joy.
Mm-hmm.
So I love this one, because this is where I try to live. Personally, I try to live in this vibration. I look outside, I see trees, and I go, oh my God, there's the trees. They make me so happy. My children think, I've called
that's a beautiful tree. Can we just stand here? Look at that. Look at that. It's funny. You go through, there's a couple cities I've been in recently that, there's some serious rust growing on the walls and stuff and of these older industrial cities. And in the past I would have been like, wow, that's ugly. And now I'm like, well, look at that. That is a pretty color of rust. That is a beautiful red. Look at that oxidizing going on there.
Yes. Patina is art.
Well, yeah, especially in some of the art cultures, the car cultures, especially, right, with the rat rods and such.
Yeah.
So like as a CEO, like how do you make decisions in joy? Like, what does that look like, or just anybody in business?
Well, I'm gonna go back to joy and purpose and knowing that you are doing something positive with your day, with your business, with your life. And joy and purpose are really pretty, all of it is wrapped up in joy. Purpose, happiness, it's all wrapped in joy. So is the CEO of Patagonia upset, or is he joyous? And I'm going to argue that individually, the CEO of Patagonia, who has made a foundation out of his business, and all of the profit basically is going to a purposeful save the earth. The earth is his only shareholder, and he has given over this company to a nonprofit, a foundation that will do this. So in perpetuity, he is actually doing good. I'm going to say that this man is a joyful man.
I'm sure he is. And you know, it's funny. I can almost be sure that he was probably joyful before he was joyful, right? Before he got this. People will say, well, yeah, it's easy to be happy and joyful when you're a multi-millionaire, in his case, probably billionaire, right? That's easy to be joyful. But you know what? Here's two things. First, there's plenty of people that have that much money who are not joyful, first off. So you don't necessarily have to be joyful to make money, but I tell you, you're always going to be searching and unhappy. And the other part is, you know, you get people fake it till you make it is a statement, right? Well, what the reason why that works, and my realization of why fake it till you make it works, is because you are acting, and even if you don't believe it yet, but you will eventually you're acting in a vibratory level of your future state of where you want to manifest.
Boom.
So you have to be in a state of joy to achieve joy. So you got to push yourself there.
Yes.
And so, yes, he was joyful before he made the billions, because that's part of how he got there.
And
it just made it even better, right? Money
just
makes more of whatever you feel.
Worth billions, because worth is a financial formula, you know, but something tells me this guy can sit outside with fire in a mountain and
still be worth billions, zillions. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's his happiness.
Yeah. Well, it just mean that, like, you should already feel like the joy that you already are a billionaire, and you will become one, because you don't need the billion. Then when the $1 billion come, you're like, as no difference. There's nothing changing. My status has not changed, because I would be, like you said, sitting in front of the stars with or without $1 billion, because I'm already a billionaire. Look at how wealthy we are. We live on a beautiful planet, gorgeous. We're infinite souls, like, you know. And it's in some ways I'm pumping myself up, because, you know, it meaning that I sometimes fall from grace and fall from joy, and when you're not as far as you wish you were, or where your plans or your goals were. So you just got to try to find your place back there and live there. And that's being ultimately in like peak flow state. Now, peace and enlightenment are next, but I feel like peace and joy and enlightenment are really closely related. You know, I mean, they're so close. It's almost like you really don't know where the one begins. I don't know where joy begins and where enlightenment, or where joy ends and enlightenment begins. You know, because to me, peace and joy, and we're talking about peace and enlightenment are the next levels, or the next two highest levels in the mental consciousness. So,
my definition of enlightenment has always been, it doesn't matter where you are, what your situation is. You have money, you don't have money. It doesn't matter. You are still the same. Mm-hmm. You are, you know, the whole there's a book called, oh boy, I hope I get this right, Shibumi. I know it.
And if we're not right, please comment below.
It's like, because I've seen a couple.
We don't need to be right. Just fact check us and help us here.
And I love the book Shibumi, and I'm saying it correctly. But I think that I've seen multiple definitions for what Shibumi is, which is a Japanese word. But Shibumi is basically a state of peace and enlightenment, regardless of where you're at. Regardless of what you do, it is an effortless. You do your life based on Shibumi, and you are effortless. It's almost, it's almost transcendental living. So, you know, I kind of think that joy gets you there. But when you've maxed out your joy, you're kind of transcendental with everything.
Well, yeah, and as
So that's
decision,
Sakura.
so when you're
That's
just
the
making,
Italian version of it. Sorry.
no, it's sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So when we talk about making decisions and really the upper room and these three areas in the upper room, so to speak, or your higher self, I feel like you're just not worried about loss. You're just not worried about lack. So every decision you make, you're like, well, we'll figure it out. I mean, well, there's not enough money. Well, find it. The money will come. Oh, I can't hire this person because I don't have budget for it. Well, if you believe that and that stay in that, then you're going to be right. So we'll be able to find the right person, and we're going to figure out a way to make it work financially, because we always do. And I feel like that's coming from a place of you've already achieved it all, and you're already there, and nothing can dislocate you from that place.
Right.
And once you're there, it's obviously certain situations like grief is real. You can get pulled down, these kind of things, but generally speaking, it is really hard to pull you back down to things, right?
Yeah.
The more and more you stay in this upper room.
And you can do it by ladders, like we've talked about, by steps, or you can skip stones and just go right to it and find it where you wake up one day, or you have the lightning bolt hit you, or however you eat the mushroom and you go, you know what? I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
Yep. And you have to keep reinforcing yourself too, and it gets easier. But again, we're trapped in the collective is not here in a joy, peace, and enlightenment. We'd be living on heaven on earth right now in this new world that a lot of people are working on. So we just got to accept the fact that in our family, maybe one of our closest friends is not in this operating vibratory sense. So you just need to accept them, love them, and don't try to force anything on them, but just have the joy and just be an example, right? I feel like being a joyful example for others is contagious. It's just like anything. Winning and losing is contagious, just like positive and negative is contagious, right?
And yawning.
And yawning. And then there's yawning. So peace and enlightenment, I don't think we need to cover that a lot, other than the fact that it's just you're making big decisions based on love and abundance and not fear. And I think that's the real key. And we'll move on in a second here before we wrap up. But Denise, anything final that you want to say about just decision making and making higher self decisions versus lower self decisions?
Everybody looks for a hack, a life hack. And this is like the ultimate life hack. If you adopt this sort of, call it a checklist, if you adopt the checklist, you almost guarantee yourself that you are on the road to enlightenment. Because the more you live in the higher vibrations, the more you will find the serendipity, and the more you will attract luck and attract all the things that you want. This is the ultimate life hack, to just vibe a little higher every day.
And just be prepared, right? That the majority of people around you won't understand this. and that's where you need to be that beacon of light for them, to show them the way, but don't try to force it on them. Don't try to, mansplain something about joy that they're not doing. I've tried that. It's a very negative experience.
Mansplaining and gaslighting, we got to do something on that.
Yeah, we should
say.
But just dude, this is for you. This is for you. Do it for yourself. And that's where it's okay to be selfish, because this is for you, and this is for your own spiritual and life and soul journey, which is infinite.
Which is the egoist.
So before we hop into the meditation, just real go quick, what we're going to be going on next year. So we'll start again the first week in January. That Thursday, I think it's the 6th, I believe. Let me just confirm here.
Something like that.
But it's that the first Thursday in January. It's the 5th, excuse me, January 5th. And we have some really great people that we're going to be interviewing that are doing everything around karmic capitalism. Some will talk about karmic capitalism. Other parts will jump into the map of consciousness. We'll talk about law of attraction. We will talk about past life experiences, Akashic records, regression analysis, as far as putting all these together, soul groups. This is going to be a really exciting year. And we're going to keep this up for every week next year. And, and we'll have breaks during holidays and other things because we have families and we love doing this and bringing this for you guys. But, for us, this is really a passion project for us, and we hope it's helping you. That's the point. And it helps us too. This is in our own development. This is extremely helpful. The best way to learn is to teach, right, Denise?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, this is really important to me. So I thank you all for listening.
Yeah, we are so grateful, and we really wish everybody to have a tremendous and abundant 2023 and a wonderful time with your family during this holiday season. Really appreciate it and work on that. If you're in an airplane or an airport, imagine everybody's your besties. Just imagine that and see it. I'd love to hear some comments about that. And then, it's going to be a great start. We've learned a lot. This is the 11th episode. Again, we'll have at least, maybe at most 52 episodes next year. We're not going to do it for every week, but it'll be close, around over 40. And we're going to bring on a lot of exciting people that are doing this.
Cool.
So you just won't be just Denise and I every time. So again, this has just been a great learning experience for us. And I hope that you guys have learned and through 11 episodes, this has been helpful in your own karmic capitalist journeys. And so any final words before I hop into the guided meditation?
No, we're over. So you got to go.
All right, let's do it. All right. So we're going to get going here. So again, everybody, we're going to go through the breaths. This is really about subconscious reprogramming. So if you're listening to this now, we might do these things as a separate sort of subconscious reprogramming meditations in separate excerpts. Maybe we'll start doing that next year. Any feedback on that, we'll take that. Any ideas? But I want to just I'm going to walk you through and I'm going to talk to you through this. So you're going to listen, and I want to get you down, into a very relaxed state. So let's start there. This is going to be quick. So everybody just please close your eyes. And I want you to take a deep breath. Hold. And breathe out. And when we breathe in, I want you to breathe in all this light, and I want you to breathe out all of the negativity, all the negative thoughts or the negative decisions. And let's do it again. Now we're going to breathe in for as long as you can, slowly. And then you hold it and breathe out. We can do this again. Now breathe in through your nose. Hold. Breathe out slowly. Get all of that out of you. Everything relaxed. Now I'm going to start talking to you through your subconscious. And you can repeat in your head, or you can even say it out loud. It's okay. So we're going to do some affirmations. All my decisions are based on love and abundance. My decisions always create an overflow of wealth, love, happiness, and health for me and everyone I meet. My decisions always lead to great success and abundance for all. Now I'm going to say this a couple more times. All my decisions are based on love and abundance. My decisions always create an overflow of wealth, love, happiness, and health for me and everyone I meet. My decisions always lead to great success and abundance for all. Last time. All my decisions are based on love and abundance. My decisions always create an overflow of wealth, love, happiness, and health for me and everyone I need. My decisions always lead to great success and abundance for all. Now I want you to take one more deep breath. Bring it in. Feel it through your toes. Hold it. Hold it. And breathe out. Now open your eyes. Now, and Denise, this is a great subconscious reprogramming. And if you do this over and over again, if you just do this literally I would recommend, if you're making scarcity-based decisions, I would do this again and again in the morning and the evening before you go to bed, first thing when you wake up, and when you go to bed, right before you go to bed, and do this for 30 days. And you will literally have been successfully reprogrammed your mind, and you will also be attracting this in working in this vibratory sense. So this is getting you in that vibration of making love-based decisions. So, Denise, anything last before we conclude this?
Yeah, no upside being cynical here.
So
has no upside.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you for a wonderful 2022. Have a wonderful and abundant 2023. And we will see you for episode 12 on January 5th, 2023. Thanks, everyone. Love you. Love everyone. Love you, Denise. Love you all. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye.